Today I'm going to introduce you to the Nanjing Yangtze River Bridge. It's an extraordinary case. So before I start my lecture, probably I need to give you a little more background about the memory project that I was conducting. The bridge was being repaired for the moment, and then I find it quite extraordinary for not only the building itself, but rather how many people was actually associated to this special piece of object. There was so much affiliations and emotions, memories attached to it that actually make me interested. So I launched this project called Memory Project of the Bridge. So what I'm researching is not the bridge per se, but rather people's relationship to the bridge. The main project of this memory project is about the bottom-up participatory placemaking project, rather than an art history or research project. So this is what's going on 2 days ago, and on this 9th of September, the last Saturday. This is one of our memory project. We have this temporary pavilion on top of the bridge. It's for 1 day only. The repair work construction stopped for half day to leave space and time for our maneuver. And then we make a call nationwide for anyone who can occupy the bridge for 3 minutes. So we provide a stage. So anyone can contact us saying, I have a good idea, I want to do something that he or she thinks really interesting. And then we will pick out 100 of these great ideas. And then we have real-time broadcasting of these activities. For example, this is one of them. Somebody wants to shout out the missed place names in Nanjing. And then his activity is being broadcasted real-time online through different platforms. So altogether, I think about 100,000 people watched this real-time broadcasting on Saturday. So this is one of the activities that we are organizing. The basic idea is to actually use the bridge as a contemporary medium, as a medium to trigger contemporary plays. But in order to do so, it is very important to have a quite rigorous research behind it, because I don't want the bridge to become a national monument like Yuhuatai or Zhongshan Mausoleum, which is, for me, is too serious. And I also don't want it to become a carnival site or biennale site. It becomes too popular, it's become a kind of leisure park, and I don't want it to be like that. So in order to do so, I think it's very important that we have public participation, but we also have a very rigorous historical research behind it. So any on-site event or installation or design actually intends to trigger people's past memory and use that to stimulate contemporary placemaking. So that's the background. In general, my presentation is going to investigate the bridge and try to give, following Ramkua's approach, I call it a retroactive manifesto. Because the bridge was designed not as a kind of manifestation in itself, at least not intentionally. So the red futurism is from my retroactive study of the bridge, and try to forge, or actually to redefine the kind of hidden intention of a collective project. So in order to understand that, why the bridge was built, it's very important to go back to 1949. So this is a map, the railway map of China in 1949. We can see that, use my hand. So basically, this is Yangtze River. So in northern China, there are quite well-developed network of railway. In southern China, okay, but then there are only two neck on neck. So a similar map in, I think, October 1949. We see similar situation. So this is the Yangtze River, the railway network in the north, railway network in the south, but then these two parts was not connected very well. We have to understand that China at that time, the communist government based in Beijing was established, and then the Republican government was retreating to Taiwan, but always ready to come back or fight back. So it is essential for the communist government to connect north and south, and in order to integrate China in one infrastructural campaign. So I think by 49, it is a national, it is probably one of the most important efforts of the Beijing government is to build up these two bridges. So the bridge is not simply for local use. It's actually used, I think, basically as a railway bridge to connect three of the most important cities in China: Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou. So the Wuhan Bridge linked Beijing to Guangzhou, and Nanjing Bridge linked Beijing to Shanghai. So these two bridges was built as part of the effort to integrate China, or integrate the territory of China into one piece. So basically, the military integration of China was completed in 1950 or 51, but actually the whole territory or the land of China was finally integrated after the completion of the two bridges. That is 1968. So from the very beginning, the Nanjing-Yangtze River Bridge is not a bridge of Nanjing. It is a bridge of whole China. As this map shows, we see here the yellow circle is the city wall of Nanjing, but then the bridge is actually quite far from the city. It has nothing to do with Nanjing, not until 1980s when it's connected to the urban roads. So for the 20 years, Nanjing-Yangtze River Bridge was actually a national infrastructure rather than a bridge for the city. So this was a bridge when it was built in 1968. So I need to quickly introduce you to the composition of the bridge. So when I talk about the bridge, I do not simply refer to the structure itself. The bridge includes, of course, the bridge, but then it has what they call bridge towers, which is quite extraordinary because the bridge engineering in the 20th century no longer requires the bridge towers. In the 19th century, they are sometimes necessary to have towers actually to hang the bridge. But then in the 20th century, these towers are not necessary. They are from the very beginning, the towers are built as symbol of the bridge, or as the symbol of the guard of the bridge, rather than any engineering need or kind of a structural need. And also, underneath the bridge, there's an enormous park, 10 hectares of nothing. It is a park, but it is actually, we have a spare seat here. Because the bridge, when it was finished, it was listed as the 50 most important military target in China. And for the decades after its completion, the Chinese, the government always worried that the Americans are targeting at it. So just below the bridge, there are regularly more than 1,000 soldiers guarding the bridge. And this park is not built for the civilians, not for the people. It's actually to keep people away from the bridge. So it's a territory that's purified or actually to segregate it from the city. So that creates a space for me because until today, this park does not belong to the municipality of Nanjing. So the Nanjing government has no right to this park. The park belongs to the railway ministry. And the railway ministry has no interest to develop any landscape or any park for it has nothing to do with the railway ministry. So nobody has a right to the park. So I contacted the railway ministry saying that, okay, give the space to me and I will develop it. And then the Nanjing government has no way to stop me because they don't have the right to the park. So that's the context. So our question is, this was the rendering of the final built proposal of the bridge. So is this thing a piece of infrastructure or an architecture, or neither? It is something that become, as Boya said, become a national symbol of cultural revolution. So why a bridge becomes a symbol? Why a bridge become a selected monument or selected icon of cultural revolution than a big public architecture or something else? It's a bridge. It's supposed to have a function. It's supposed to have a quite direct purpose, but then why it was selected as a symbol of a cultural revolution rather than a military or technological revolution. It's a cultural revolution. It's supposed to target as a revolution of everyday culture, right? And then, by analyzing this special case, can we, through analysis of this case, try to understand the what we call architecture of cultural revolution in general? Because this is a kind of missed link in the Chinese architecture history, as if nothing happened in the 1960s. But does this missed history of architecture relate to contemporary Chinese architecture in some way? Perhaps. For example, this kind of thing. There was something very inherently modern in it, and something also quite it's not decorative. I mean, it's kind of a propaganda, but propaganda is also part of the modern campaign, right? So there was something, I mean, the different factors of modernism have a quite extraordinary composition in this kind of a piece of work. And then, besides architecture, can we use this special case to actually help us to better understand the everyday condition of Chinese society in general? For example, like the image in the right shows the worker from the kind of medical apparatus factory conducting X-ray test. These workers testing their own products. So in order to better understand this special case, I will quickly introduce 3 anecdotes. The first one is a film called Chongguo, or China, by an Italian film director, Michelangelo Antonioni. Hi. This picture, this photo immediately triggers my interest because I think he is offending Chairman Mao. And by making this kind of gesture, try to mimic Chairman Mao, I mean, he already doomed to be disliked by Chairman Mao. And on the right, we have a children's song called "Let's Make Antonioni Mad." It's called "Little Red Guard," and listen to the party, and party knows best. Let's make Antonioni mad. I mean, it's quite extraordinary. Imagine there are kids, a group of kids singing this song. Do they really know who this Antonioni is? But they remember the name. And I have a particularly personal story relating to that, because when I was born, and my father wanted to give me a name, and he think Antonioni sounds like a good name. And that's serious. He don't know what does that mean. Who is this guy? But he think Anton looks good. He call me Anton. So why we are getting this name. So you see here, the sound spread, freed from the meaning, is something kept in memory and circulated and misused, and then detached from the original meaning it signifies. So why was Antonioni's documentary offend Chairman Mao? That's quite interesting because he's an advocate of the communist movement. So, and he was invited to China to make this documentary by the Prime Minister Zhou Enlai. So in the very beginning, the party believed that he will make something very good to help the Communist Party. But then his film made some shots about the Nanjing Yangtze River Bridge, a sequence of shots. So this is a distant shot showing the Yangtze River Bridge, followed up by a close-up shot, followed up by a row of boats, and then there's a soldier cleaning up his underwear. And then this shot, it was that shot that annoyed Chairman Mao. He's saying it's a deliberate attack on Chinese communism. So we see that what's interesting is that a documentary 4 hours long, 3 to 4 hours long, with this one shot or miss shot of the Yangtze River Bridge that annoyed the whole nation. And American philosopher Susan Sontag make a quite interesting comment on that special event. She suggests that that special shot of that bridge is seen as some kind of trespass, an act of disrespect, a sublimated looting of the personality or the culture. So what's interesting is that it seems the bridge has already embodied particular ways of looking at it. If you don't shoot the bridge in such a way, you already offend that mechanism, that relationship, that spatial relationship between the viewpoint and the bridge. So it is not only a bridge, it is a bridge with fixed perspectives. So why was that happening? So following that soldier's shot, Antonioni is a subsequent shot. It's a stage in the center of Nanjing near Gulou. And this special stage also fascinates me. You have this pair of columns, and on top of the column you have 3 red flags. And between this column you have a portrait of Chairman Mao, and who formulate a special central axis. So all this composition actually try to stage a central axis with Chairman Mao as a central focus, and then he looks into the distance. And this exact composition was what's happening in the Yangtze River Bridge. So, I mean, in terms of composition, the bridge tower and this stage are exactly the same. We have 2 towers. On the top of tower, we have the three flags, and between these 2 towers, we have a statue of Chairman Mao standing in the mid. And here we have a portrait. So this is a special altar or shrine of Chairman Mao. It's the same as the Yangtze River Bridge. So this thing reminds me that probably this bridge tower is not a tower as usual. It is actually a temple or a shrine or a mausoleum of Chairman Mao. And then I tried to follow the line. I mapped all the visual images I could find about the bridge. So these are a spatial mapping of all the representation of the bridge according to their viewpoint in the 1970s and 80s and 90s. So we see a gradual moving forward of the point of views, actually, points of views. So in the 70s, these representations are rather clustered at fixed viewpoints, which are authorized or endorsed by propaganda, national propaganda mechanism. But then in the 80s become much loose, and you can shoot the bridge and put it in different on the media quite freely. The second story is about the bridge, the representation of the bridge in everyday life. It's quite extraordinary that the bridge, or the visual image of the bridge, appeared so wide in the Chinese everyday culture. It appeared on as printing or as visual images. That's quite normal. But then on the stamps and all the tokens, and appeared on these badges and clocks. And these things are quite extraordinary. For example, on the right, these are the back linens for weddings. So these 2 married couple, on their day of marriage, they will, carry something with a bridge on it. It's so extraordinary, and also, it's quite popular. So then what was the meaning of this icon here? Is it still a bridge? It's still a military icon or still an industry icon? What it stands for? And also, for example, it appeared on fans, and also on, this is the holder of ink, the traditional kind of ink holder. That's quite extraordinary because people will use these brushes, it's a brushwork thing, and then it's supposed to be very traditional, and they carved the bridge onto that special ink holder. And cups, all this, for example, biscuit cane. And mirrors quite extraordinary. I've seen one mirror that has a big bridge on it. That means you cannot see your face unless you peep through those columns, and you see your face quite fragmented by this bridge. So these are extraordinary things. And also, for example, for candy, for soap, everything with the icon of the bridge. And photographs. If you look closely, these are not photos taken on the bridge. They are photos taken in front of the representation of the bridge in different parts of China. So from the collections we've got, actually more than 50% of all these portraits were actually taken in front of the representation of the bridge. And also, the bridge was not only presenting in terms of visual icon. For example, this is a song called "Safeguard the Grand Bridge for My Homeland." Actually, it was ordered that for every train that goes through the bridge, while it was going through, you have to play the song. So there are hundreds of millions of Chinese that must know the melody. Probably ignore the lyric, but they know the melody and associate this special melody with the memory of the bridge. So, for example, this is not a complete mapping, but that's from what I can identify. The icon, objects with the icon of the bridge appeared from all over China. It's not a local bridge, it's a national monument, and it appeared everywhere. It's quite extraordinary why it appeared in so diverse kinds of objects from such diverse locations and places. And third story is a little bit tragic, I think. It's called the End of Nanjing film. Actually, the bridge is the top one suicide hotspot in the world. It doubles the number of Golden Gate Bridge in the States. So since the time the bridge was completed, already more than 2,000 people successfully committed suicide on top of the bridge. But what's extraordinary is that very few local people commit suicide. Also, I think Nanjing people are very quite optimistic. Yeah, Nanjing 大萝卜. We never think of suicide. We just make fun of ourselves. So but the data shows that more than 99.9% of the people committed suicide here would have traveled very long distance. It's quite extraordinary why people travel so long to this particular place to commit suicide. It should have a special meaning or special connection to people that make it a kind of ideal site for them to give a conclusion to their life. Yes. And then it also triggered people who want to save those lives. This was a documentary in 2019. It's someone who voluntarily patrolled the bridge to save people. So he started in 2004, and until today, he already saved around 140 people. So 2 years ago, and two directors made this film called End of Nanjing. But then, what's extraordinary is that the bridge, after the 1980s, has gradually lost its original status it was so important in 1968, and at least for the decade after it. It was I think, unarguably the most important tourist destination in Nanjing. And in 1968, it was the most important thing, or the most important event in China of the completion of this bridge. On the newspaper in the 1st of January, it's kind of a New Year newspaper. On the front page, there are two news. On the top, the two-thirds of the top page is celebrating the completion of the bridge, and the bottom is a celebration for the atom bomb, is for the nuclear weapons. So it's, at that time, the bridge was considered more important than the nuclear weapons. And then today, I mean, I think a few years ago, Nanjing wanted to select 48 tourist destinations of Nanjing, and this one was almost overlooked. And I think it's the item for the number 47, number 48. So its significance was so rapidly diminished. It's quite interesting, you know, for something so famous and so well known, why it was so quickly forgotten. And it becomes something extraordinary that has been returned to its original status as a structure or a bridge. So its original status is not a bridge, but now it becomes preferred to be regarded as a bridge, probably. So these three anecdotes, I think, has revealed something quite extraordinary, some aspects quite extraordinary about the bridge. The first one, Michelangelo Antonioni's story, suggests that this is not only a piece of work, a piece of structure, it is something associated with fixed point of view, fixed perspectives. So I probably argue that the bridge is one of the first media architecture in China, because it was so widely circulated and so many people know the bridge from its representation on media. So it was associated with fixed ways of looking at it. It's different. For example, if a bridge was printed on the thing, and if I give it to where's my wife? she went out tourism. Okay, I give it to her, and then this thing becomes also a kind of evidence, a witness of love, and it becomes something that links people, and also the evidence of certain relationships or past memories. So the more the icon enters into everyday objects and everyday situations, the more it's embedded into everyday life, and the more it was a kind of a medium of memory, or medium of potential affiliations. So the bridge becomes an extraordinary monument because of its representation in everyday life. And so that's why there are so many people who have stories to tell about this bridge. And the third one, about the suicide story, I think it actually raised a question about the kind of dual presence of this bridge. It is both a symbol and a structure. So actually the symbolism and the structural use actually compete with each other on this bridge. In the 1960s and 70s, the symbolism dominates, and then in the 1980s and 90s and afterwards, the structural meaning or the functional meaning come forth and dominates the symbolism. So having this kind of basic idea in mind, I'm now introducing you to the design of this bridge, why it was designed as such. The story has to be told from 1954, the first bridge across the Yangtze River. As I've told in the very beginning, that from 1949, these two bridges are destined to be built, actually as a symbol for the unification of China into one. So these from the very beginning, these two bridges are destined to be a symbol of political action. In 1954, there was a national competition for the design of the Wuhan Bridge, not the Nanjing one, it's the Wuhan Yangtze River Bridge. And there was a committee of famous architects and bridge designers. And altogether, there are 32 competition entries. And the final proposal was actually the number 32 in the first round. So it's the last one in the assessment of the committee. But when it's sent to Beijing, there was a Russian expert who said that I want the last one. All the previous one was not right in terms of socialism, and last one is right. So Chairman Mao said, let's follow the Soviet Union's experts' idea. So make this the last proposal the built one. And this was a big attack on the architecture of the time. The designer of this bridge was called Tang Huanchen, Tang. He recalled later that Liang Sichen was a very famous founding father of Chinese architecture. After that competition, Liang Sichen talked to the students from the architecture department at Tsinghua University, which was arguably the best university. I came from Tsinghua. Arguably, yeah, the best architecture department in China. Saying that this competition, the architects all lose to a young structural engineer, and we have to reflect upon that. So what's wrong with our architectural approach? And that's quite interesting. I will talk about that later. So Tang Huanchen's design proposal for the Wuhan Bridge is praised for its economic terms. So the basic structure of the bridge was very rational, and it put a very small architectural piece on top of the bridge. It's a very elegant pavilion. So that saved money. And because of that, the Zhou Enlai quite like it, and it was the main reason for it to be selected. And all the architects' proposal at that time was very extravagant, a lot of decoration, and quite expensive. And this engineer, because he don't know architecture too much, at least not Beaux-Arts architecture, so he don't make too much decoration and make the proposal very economic. And then, in 1958, there was a national competition for the Nanjing Yangtze River Bridge. So 7 proposals was made to enter this design competition. This one, second, third, this was the winning proposal, and it was about to be built in 1958. And what we see here, this was a proposal designed by the Nanjing Institute of Technology. Today it's called Southeast University. It's arguably number 2 and number 3, competing with Tongji University. What's interesting is that we see obviously the architects has learned from their defeat in 1954, and they all try to use this approach to decorate or to locate a small piece of architecture on top of the bridge. At least most of this piece are like that. And another quite interesting and extraordinary hidden inherent aspect is that from the side, these 3 bays are not equal. It has a wider central bay, all of them, to formulate a side axis. So if you look from the side, these towers or this architectural piece is symmetrical. If you study closely, it's all like that. It's quite extraordinary. It deliberately tried to change the distance of this base which is not so rational in terms of structure, to make it architectural in some way. So we call that symmetrical. But then something happened. In 1960, all the previous proposals was cancelled, and the central government ordered a second round design competition. And something quite important changed between 58 and 90, that China started to find an alternative approach to socialism apart from the Soviet Union's approach. So in 1959, in the end of 1958, Chairman Mao believed that the Chinese communism or Communist Party have found its own approach, different from the Soviet Union one. So I think probably that's the context for the second round of competition, because the previous round were all borrowed from the Wuhan Bridge, which followed the Soviet Union's approach to decorate the bridge with a kind of a national form, which was considered to be, at least we need an alternative approach. So that also, indicates the special status of the Nanjing Yangtze Bridge. The bridge, from the date of its construction, was considered as a monument to demonstrate the Chinese approach to socialism or communism. So during the construction period, more than 100 political leaders from all countries was invited to visit the construction site. And after the bridge was completed, more than 80 national leaders was invited to visit the site. So altogether, there are around 200. So it was not simply a bridge or even a monument. It was used as a demonstration of the Chinese approach to its own communism, or its Chinese version of communism. So what's happening in the second round of design competition? Altogether, there are 58 proposals received. But what's intriguing is that from all resources, I only collected 54. This design entries was stored in different institutions, but in everywhere, 4 of them missed. I think they probably have been destroyed, so I cannot find them. But basically, from the 48 I've got, from the 54 I got, they were categorized into these 5 categories. Sorry, I don't have time to put English onto it, but I will explain individually. This was not my invention. This terminology was written on the competition album or the competition portfolio in 1960. So these 5 categories. The first one is called symmetrical, from the side. If we remember the last round, all the proposals was symmetrical from the side. So something dramatic has changed. The second round, 3 out of 54 selected the symmetrical from the side option. In the contrast to previous round, that everyone, all of them was symmetrical on the side. So it's obviously that the architects has some political sense. They know what's going to happen, and they obviously avoid the previous style. And then 12 of them using what they call the bridge style. So it's a big arch instead of 3 bays. The big arch has some more variation, like this one is quite interesting because it's a little bit modern and quite odd shape. And what's the most interesting thing is this one. It's called closed or semi-closed type. So 17, that's rather 1/3 of all the proposals was as such. So by closed, it means a big block. It's a skyscraper. It's a big thing. It's gigantic. It should be at least 5,000 square meters. It's terribly tall. Like the second one, I think it should be already as tall as 100 meters. It's a big block. So I think 1/3 of the architects decided to put a big architecture there rather than a small tower of the bridge. here what we see is no longer like a bridge. It looks as if it's a big piece of architecture or cathedral, and then a small bridge actually goes through it or pass through this piece of architecture. And some are quite old. For example, the one on the top left, it looks quite modern in some way with this big curved profile. But if we study more closely, what's a closer look? What was to have a closer look? This one looks quite modern and try to show speed. But if you study the ground plan, it's very traditional. It's like a basilica, actually. It has a central axis, it has different stages, and then it has an apse in the very end, storing a statue of Chamamao. So it formulates a central axis. So you cannot imagine such a plan with this kind of perspective. And actually, that was the plan of the bridge level of this one. You see here is actually the road was widened to formulate a kind of a square shape. Another intriguing proposal by Tongji University. There was only 2 proposals from Tongji, all very strange. This one looks a little bit postmodern, right? Like James Sterling, I think probably. But quite intriguing. It's a big block. And another one by Tongji, kind of hexagonal one. Don't know why, but it seems that Tongji was very interested in geometrical volume. I haven't found the designer of these 2 proposals. No one from Tongji committed them. And then is a type called all other types. There are 7 proposals, but basically it's all the trifluarc type. And this one was called non-symmetrical type. So it's the one with 3 equal bays. So these are the 3 final proposals. This is a winning proposal designed by Professor Zhong Xunzhen, a national academician now. And this is the second one by Chen Taining. He's also a national academician. And the third one also by Zhong Xunzhen. So Zhong Xunzhen made 2 proposals. This is a trifluarc proposal. And this was the final proposal. But this one was extraordinary. Why? I tried to make models of all of these proposals and try to analyze the composition. So this was the composition of this final proposal. But what's extraordinary is this podium on the ground floor. Because if we compare Nanjing with Wuhan, we will understand. Because all this bridge have stands. So the best way to go past it is just to go past it from the side. I think that's probably why in the first round they have this kind of symmetrical approach, because the bridge was imagined to be approached from the side. The movement was to go through the bridge. But then, in the proposal for the Nanjing Bridge, it deliberately made this podium to block the bypass, to block any goes through of this bridge. You cannot go through. You have to change your way of walking. For example, if you go this way, you have to, for example, from here, go there, and then go downstairs. And then on top of the bridge, it was widened a little bit. Not as serious as the curved one, but it was widened. In the original sketch of the design proposal, we see that both of Zhong Xunzhen's proposal, it has a colonnade on the top. So the original proposal was, on the top of the bridge, was actually 2 flags, 2 statues, and a colonnade that links these things to formulate a square a square, a public square. And then, in a later phase, probably because of the cost, they removed this colonnade. But basically, even today, on the top of the bridge, it will widen a little bit. So this place is no longer a bridge, or no longer a road. During the Cultural Revolution, at important days, all the university students, especially those who do very good, party members, they will gather on this special place on top of the bridge and listen to loudspeaker that tell them the most recent news about Chairman Mao, and they will repeat the teaching of Chairman Mao and then go back to the university. So this place is no longer a kind of road. It is a public square. It is a square that connects via the radio to Beijing. This was demonstrated by another detail. From the very beginning of the construction of the bridge, I think in 1960 or 61, Zhou Enlai has ordered that the Nanjing Yangtze River Bridge must use the lamp, the magnolia lamp is a special lamp, is a special glass lamp that is similar to the Chang'an Street in Beijing, in front of the Tiananmen. So it's ordered to use the similar lamp of the Tiananmen to indicate that this bridge or this road actually is an avatar or the kind of representation of the political space in Beijing above the Yangtze River. So this is not a normal road or a normal bridge or a normal square. It is something or a receptive platform of the message of Beijing. I think the lamp is a symbol of synchronization with Beijing. So when you stand there, your mode synchronized to the radio signals and listen to the voice of Chairman Mao. So the top of the bridge tower is actually a kind of decoy or a receptive platform to Beijing, and the middle part is a normal railway. It's a national infrastructure that links Beijing to Shanghai, and in the bottom we have this podium. This podium actually blocks any bypass. So it's a sandwich thing. It's a sandwich architecture. It's not one thing. It's 3 levels that have different functions. And if we study closely at this podium, it's very much similar to what you have found in the Forbidden City, like in the the Eternal Peace. Is it right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Because podiums was raised the architecture above the ground to formulate a sacred land or sacred territory. So here the podium has similar role. It actually raised a part of the ground to formulate a lifted land, a kind of sacred territory, in order to have a central axis that formulates beginning, middle, and end. So if we look closely, we have this beginning, and we go through this beginning, we go up a few steps, we see layers of gateways, and we go through it to the very end. There's a Chairman Mao who will say hello to you. So what we see here is obviously a deliberate central axis. So now we understand why it has a podium. The podium deliberately blocks any bypass, any going through, in order to shift all the kind of trajectory to this promenade towards Chairman Mao.
Just a quick question. Is this just your analysis about the project, or is this the actual presentation at that time with this intention with similarity to the palaces?
It's my interpretation.
Okay.
Nobody noticed that? But I think, I have to persuade you, but I think it's right. But what's interesting is that, first, until end of the 1970s, this space was not open to the public. only foreign visitors can enter the space. So I think it's probably not a kind of a public space, or it's a space of try to teach people. It's not like that. It is, I think, it's a sacred place. It's a place, I think, it embodies this special procession, but it's not actually used as such. So not many people know that until today. And this is on the other side, in the north of the Yangtze, on the north bank of the Yangtze River. It has another tower. It's the procession route. I will show you another evidence that why I think it's a deliberate design. Another thing is that actually these two red flag towers, are detached from the main structure. It has no structural use. Inside these two towers, there are two staircases, but the staircases are too small, so they deliberately enlarged its space to formulate these two blocks. So what we see here, the final result are two staircases with very large platforms. So in each tower, there are 13 platforms. So historically, if you climb up this tower, so you have a lot of stops, and on each platform you can sit there and with a lot of paintings hanging around you. So these are all paintings by famous artists, like this one by Wu Guanzhong, or Wei Zixi, or Qian Songyuan. These artists are ordered to make drawings or paintings about this bridge, and their work will be hanged inside this staircase. So this staircase is not a normal staircase. It's actually an enlarged one, a little bit like the Guggenheim in New York. It's for you to climb up while you have a look around, or to prepare yourself morally or spiritually of the right way to look into this bridge. So it's kind of educational space. And what's interesting about these two things, here I found some of the original, these are models, photos of the models of the bridge. And what's more importantly are the documentary photos of the construction of the bridge. So what we see here, this one is very clear. So basically, the bridge was constructed also with these stands, and then they put a metal or steel structure on this part to make it look a big block. And Chairman Wang was actually standing here. So it was not built as a cube. It was built as a normal bay, and put a stair here, a platform here to formulate space. And then what's more interesting is that look at this space. It is actually useless. In terms of structure, the beam, you only need this height is enough. But then, because they want the gateway underneath, a proper, well-proportioned gateway, so they have to make another beam here, and to enclose a chamber inside it. So here is already have an enclosed chamber. So actually, in order to make that promenade thing, you have to imagine that here are all enclosed chambers in it to make a very well-proportioned gateway. So this space looks quite architectural or elegant because all these things are quite well-proportioned, and because it doesn't actually follow the structural logic. Actually, the beam are quite just like that, but it was too high as a gateway, so they make another beam and enclose a chamber in it. So for this part, actually, we have a series of artificially made gateways. And then we have this podium, and we also have the magnolia tree and also the special kind of lamp to formulate a space. It's more like probably a cathedral without wall. Yeah, a better look. So after all these structures was finished, these two towers, these two staircase was constructed in the very end over 28 days. So it's a special kind of a last minute thing, made this construction of these two staircase with this red flag in 28 days. So these two towers are very badly constructed, and it was a kind of untold story about the bridge.